I am almost done with this sketchbook. I'm on the last page. So I am going to finish the last page and then do a sketchbook tour. I've lately been doing a lot of master studies, and I've been working some out of this book. It's Thomas Eakins, His Life and Art. It's a fantastic book. It's huge, as you can see. And this gentleman is a study out of that. And I decided I would finish one more pencil study, and I'm going to do this scene. It's called Drifting from 1875. This is a watercolor, but I'm just gonna do a simple graphite sketch. This is the sketchbook I have been working in, and actually I need to put a final date on this. I finished this book in August of 2022, so I worked through it pretty quickly, and I started in Rochester, Minnesota, and I finished in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. This is my favorite sketchbook right now. I love that it's inexpensive. It comes in two different sizes, this larger, well, I think it comes in more than two, but I have this larger size and then an A5 size, I think, that's good for landscapes and such. It's easier to carry around because this one's pretty big. So let's do a little tour here. There is a little bit of everything in here. I have tried to have sketchbooks where it's like, this is my graphite sketchbook, this is my landscape sketchbook, and I just can't do that. I'm just all over the place. So this is, I'm starting off with a study. It's called Capistrano Canyon, and this is an Edgar Payne study in gouache. And I was just I had tried to paint a couple of landscapes in oil, and they were really muddy, and I felt very rusty. And I did this as just a warm-up, just to work with different greens and blues, and it was really more for fun than anything else. These are some cloud studies just based on photos that I did, and they're also in gouache. And I was trying sort of an underpainting with each one just to see how different tones looked. These are some pen and ink sketches I did just while I was sitting outside, and my dad said the cow looked like a rhinoceros, so I had to keep working on it. But the cow he was kind of a chunky, boxy cow, or maybe her, so that I kind of kept ending up with the same thing. I did a couple of pears, a landscape based on a photo, and this was also based on a photo that I took, sketching a nearby farmhouse. And this is a little thumbnail of a pond that I did an oil painting of. These are some pen and ink thumbnail master studies. I was working in pen and ink, so I couldn't get too finicky about how they looked. So some are more successful than others. I tried to do a variety of styles. I was working out of I think it was a French Impressionist book. So we have Renoir, Cezanne, Vermeer. Well, Vermeer is not, I don't know why Vermeer was in there. Maybe it was like great paintings. I don't know. This is Vermeer, the lace maker, which it really looks more like someone like snuggled up in a blanket with like Starbucks. But anyway, it was a good exercise. These, I think, even just after doing 6 and then 6 more, I feel like these were a bit more successful. My Picasso was pretty rough. This one by Matisse, I kind of struggled with the weird proportions and everything, but I did enjoy these studies as well. I did a study of Ferguson, and I'm really interested in studying his work more. This is not my style at all, but I really enjoyed this. This is a part of an art class called 10 Days of Art, and it is taught by Rosalind Pratt, and it's on Jean Oliver's website. I'm a big fan of her art classes. We've got some more pen and ink studies. These are also a part of the 10 Days of Art. I did some little thumbnails. You can see this is a thumbnail of the Ferguson. We've got John Singer Sargent, Manet. I think that's John Singer Sargent as well, and this is Wilkie. This is after Eakins. I was working on profiles. I really loved her dress. So I ended up, as you can see, I ended up erasing the profile quite a lot and just keeping it kind of loose. But I really dive into the profiles here. This is my family, my husband and my 2 boys. This one is not a likeness. I had to apologize to him. Some of it looks a little like him, but it mostly doesn't. And these do sort of capture my boys. I think I can tell that those are them, but I still need to work on it more. And the way to work on it is just to practice. This is also from 10 Days of Art. I was trying to draw this Rembrandt study in a few different mediums. I ended up really liking the charcoal with some water. The pen and ink, I kept like trying to fix things and just getting too heavy with it. This is a study of Manet's painting of the Monet family in their garden. Here's an example. And I did this in acrylics. And again, I really enjoy how it turned out. I was actually traveling at the time and I didn't have any red paint. So I was just using burnt sienna, and that still even worked out. But I loved playing with the tones of the grass, and I really love drawing like old dresses, so this one was fun for me. This is actually just some playing around with like branding, sketches and colors and ideas, and usually I do this kind of stuff in another notebook, but I ended up doing it in this one because it's what I had with me. This page went awry. So this is after Ingres. I love his portraits. They are so beautiful and refined. And I decided to do it in watercolor. And I think that was a little bit of a mistake. Her eyes kind of got away from me. It's not a great likeness, but you know, you still learn. It's still, I didn't cut it out, but I resisted that urge definitely. And this is a John Singer Sargent study in acrylics. And once I was done, I could tell that her legs are like off. So again, that's another thing to learn. So I learned like I really need to look at what does the body look like underneath the clothing, which is why drawing and painting nudes are so popular. I got some new paints from Jean Oliver. These are Wallace Seymour paints. These are actually tempera paints that are pre-mixed in the tube. And so I was just experimenting with the colors along with mixtures of colors. And this is a tempera abstract, just playing with it, just not trying to do anything specific. I guess it's kind of an abstract landscape, but it was really more about just playing with the paints and layering them and sort of scooting them around with a squeegee. Here are some pencil studies of Picasso. I got a Picasso book that has his early work in it, and I wanted to try to do Picasso better justice than that pen and ink earlier in the book. And I loved this one. This is Picasso in a powdered wig and with this very fancy dress on. So almost like in a costume that's not of his time. These are both after Picasso as well. I was looking for portraits that had some like fun clothing and stuff. This is actually his sister. And I did these in a sanguine oil lead. This is after Picasso as well. I got kind of stuck on that book. And I just wanted to play with these colors. I really thought they were beautiful. I would love to try this in oils. This was in acrylic, so I couldn't like move the paint around as much as I wanted to. But I have found that working in acrylic helps me, like it forces me not to overblend. It forces me to keep the colors cleaner and just to put the paint down, leave it alone, come back and layer it. This is after Degas. I'm sure you recognize her, one of the, I think this one might be called The Dancer. And I don't think I quite got her pose and expression, but it was a good, a good exercise. And this is Wilkie. This is a self-portrait of him. And it's also in an oil sanguine lead. And I loved working with this because it's kind of like drawing with a crayon. Like you have to be a little clumsy with it. And I especially love how he turned out. This is after Bouguereau, is that how his name is said? William. Love his portraits and work. I will never be as refined in my painting as he is, but this is a study that I was working on again in oil sanguine, again working on the profiles. Here's a little Picasso. I loved this little girl. I thought she was so sweet. This is after Picasso as well, as is this one. And this is a study I did actually off of an antique painting I found online. And I just wanted to sort of play around with it. I definitely struggled with the kind of baby toddler proportions. If you sort of look, I have a great adult face there. And I did try to sort of fix it and move things around, but I didn't quite get those proportions right. And this is a self-portrait that doesn't really look like me, but I wanted to work on it. It's based on an old photo. I can sort of see myself in there, but not really. This is done with a sanguine chalk, and then I used water to kind of move it around. I'm revisiting that antique oil painting. I got the proportions better for the baby's face. I was doing this in acrylic and really was frustrated because I definitely preferred doing portraits in oil. But this was a great exercise and I had a good time painting it. These are just some abstracts that I did with some leftover acrylic paint that was on my palette. I really enjoy just trying out some different compositions, and I've really enjoyed exploring abstracts lately. So that's kind of what this was about. I got some new art supplies. These were some Inktense pens or pencils, Inktense pencils. So I wanted to try the different colors, try them with water. Also, I was trying out sanguine chalk, which is dry lead versus sanguine oil lead. And this is the chalk, and it was the first time I kind of played around with it. I actually went back to that portrait and added the chalk and the water, the self-portrait that I did. But I love how this one turned out. Like, I almost want to like cut it out and put her in a little frame. I just really like that. And I played around with some abstracts and landscapes as well with the Inktense. And then again, kind of experimenting with the Inktense. This is an oyster shell and sort of an abstract flower. And I have a tough time with pages like these because they're just playing around. They're not representative of my style or what I would consider any sort of a finished work. And my instinct is I just want to like rip it out. But there are things I can take from these, and it's okay to, I'm saying this to myself, it's okay to experiment and just leave it there and let it be what you don't like, and that's okay. You can always learn from it, and if I rip it out, then I'll forget that I ever did it. This is an acrylic painting after Eakins. Again, I'm kind of working on the profile here. That was mostly what this was about, but also just the figure, and I loved the draping of this, I don't know, toga or whatever kind of garment this person is wearing. This is, I guess I mean it to be this way. This is an abstract as well. I was just kind of playing with paints left over. It didn't quite turn out the way I wanted it to, but I do love the play of the colors. I just don't like the shape or the composition, but it gives me a starting place next time I have leftover paint on my palette to try something else. And here we're getting back to that Eakins book. I did a couple of pen and ink studies. So I loved the dress and I didn't want to mess it up by a bad profile or a bad head. So she's just a little phantom face right now. And then I picked this one because of the profile. I also enjoy drawing the piece of furniture and the fact that he's playing an instrument. This is after Picasso again. I thought this was just such an interesting piece. Again, it's totally not my style, but I loved the freedom of drawing this portrait in a way that was more abstract. This is a Sargent study off of, it's called Pointy, and I did this in red chalk with some water. And here we are at the last two that I just did. So these are also after Eakins. For this one, I was really trying to play around with the big shadow shapes and not getting too much into detail, but just letting the shadow shapes kind of tell the story. And I loved his like hairdo and this great suit, and it was a fun one. I did it just with an HB mechanical pencil, so I had to really be patient and build up layers, which is something I'm working on. And then I just shared this one, and I love how that turned out as well. It was fun to kind of do this progression of color from dark to light, or I guess of value, not color, from dark to light to showcase the ships. And that's the last page. Now, a lot of people have asked like why I only do one side of the sketchbook. I certainly could do both, but sometimes I close the book in impatience and I end up getting marks on the other side. Also, if there's one that I really love, I like the ability to cut it out, to frame it, or use it on a board or something. I also will, let me find an example. I'll make notes. Sometimes I'll do color swatches as well if I'm doing a lot of watercolor or acrylic. So for me, that's how I like to fill up the sketchbook. And these sketchbooks that I've started getting, I don't know if you noticed, but the binding is a little bit loose. That would be my only complaint. But the paper holds, I mean, you can work with just about any medium with it. It has a great elastic, and I love this sort of blue fabric cover. I think it'll look good to have a whole bunch of them on a shelf when I get a collection of sketchbooks. So there is my latest sketchbook tour.